What is up, everyone? Good morning. Happy Thursday. Thank you for joining me this morning for my office hours. I've got some interesting topics, at least interesting to me, to talk about today related to traction and business plans of all things. For those of you who don't know, my name is JDM, aka Josh David Miller, aka the Shredder of business models. And I open my doors every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific to answer whatever questions that you guys have about startups, from idea all the way to product market fit. I've worked with more than 100 founders to help them launch or scale. And my philosophy is that, you got to get out there, go to market and find traction, or at least fail fast trying. And so that's what I look forward to helping you guys do. If you ever have a question, you can submit it by hitting this link, which is in the description as well. And you can record a video if you want to. I sometimes play video questions right on here, so you can actually hear the question from the horse's mouth. But you can also just write a question or even record an audio question if that's your bag. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and dive in here with the first question. And this is one I get every so often, particularly when I'm with a certain type of entrepreneur, usually more of the Main Street type entrepreneurs, or those who are kind of in that category. And they just ask me, like, can you look over my business plan? And so I want to talk about that a little bit here, but let's see the actual question that I was asked. Name redacted here. So here we are. So this is basically what we got. The question is, will you look at my business plan? And, like, I've been working on it for almost a year, and I think it's almost ready. And can you take a look at it for me? That's basically usually the formulation of the question there. So the challenge here is that there's a couple things, and, like, this is going to be a little bit of a downer episode. I don't deny that, but the challenge here is a couple of things. So first, there are two things that stand out to me. One is the term business plan, and the second is I've been working on it for almost a year. And so my actual answer in this case is no, I won't look at it. And I know that like probably seems harsh, and I could give all the reasons, like, oh, I'm a busy guy, which is of course true, and I'm particularly busy this month, which is also true. Got the startup challenge coming up this weekend, a prototype cohort kicking off next month. I'm still in teaching a cohort right now, plus a bunch of other stuff as well. So yes, I could say all that, but that's actually not even why. Even if I had time, the answer would still be no. No, I will not look at your business plan, and there's two reasons for that. So the first one is the idea of a business plan. So I don't work like with Main Street businesses who are trying to like launch a Subway franchise. That's not my expertise. I'm just not going to be helpful there. I do not know how to launch a Subway franchise. I just don't know how to do it. And that's where you develop a business plan. You go out and you say, okay, here's what we're going to do. This is where we're going to get our money, acquire financing from a bank or something like that, or an SBA loan. And then, we're going to, purchase A, B, and C. And this is what our launch plans for that. And here's our permitting. And here's how we're going to get customers. And this is where we think our break evens. Like, there's a lot of stuff that, that goes into that, because it's fairly predictable. It's fairly well understood. This is how you launch, a Subway franchise or something like that. Or at least me from the outside being ignorant, it seems fairly straightforward. Not easy, but fairly straightforward. And I work with startups. I work with innovative companies. They're trying to do something a little bit different. And so if you're trying to, do that kind of thing, that Subway franchise type thing, I'm being a little reductive here, then I actually wouldn't be very helpful anyway. But that's not the biggest problem here. The biggest problem here is, and again, if I just show the question one more time, I've been working on it for almost a year, and I think it's almost ready. And it's honestly a little bit of a trigger for me, because, and I apologize because this is going to sound harsh, but like, unless you're, again, working on the Subway franchise, in which case I'm still skeptical that you've been working on it for a year. But if you're doing anything else and you've been working on it for a year, you haven't been working on anything for a year. You've been procrastinating for a year. You've been procrastinating for a year instead of actually doing work that was going to have value, instead of talking to customers and figuring out if there's a there there, and actually getting out of the building and getting in front of people and building and selling and just learning. Like, instead of doing any of those things, you've been behind a computer trying to come up with the brilliant idea. And ideas are just, they're shit. Like, there's the old adage, right, that no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. right? And Steve Blank turned that in for us into no business model survives first contact with the customer. And it's true. Whatever brilliant thing you come up with, as soon as you get it out into the market, it is going to crumble. So the point isn't to come up with something perfect and then get it out there. The point is to get something as narrow as possible, get it out there immediately because it's wrong anyway, and get that wrong fast so that you can pivot and find your way to the right thing. And so like I told you, it triggers me a little bit because this idea that, oh, I've been working on this plan and it's almost perfect, and I want you to come in and tell me where the holes are. That way, when I launch, I know I'm going to launch to something brilliant, you know. So it's a little, like I said, it's a little bit of a trigger for me. So no, I'm not going to look at your business plan now. So I actually just see that my camera went blank there for a second. So I'm going to see if I can figure out what's going on with that. But while I do, I'll just throw the question back up there. Okay, so that's the first one there. Next thing that I want to talk about. So again, I apologize that I know that was a little bit harsh. That's not really fun to hear. But no, I'm not going to look at your business plan because A, you're either doing something I'm not suited for, or B, you're just working on something that that you're not ready to work on. You don't put in the time to actually be ready to work on it. So there's that. So I just wanted to say that. Nope, camera's still blank. All right, well, we're live, and this is the fun of being live. So we're just gonna roll with it, and we're gonna move on to the next question here. So the next question is about finding traction. What should I do to find traction? And so this is it seems similar on the surface, but it's actually kind of different. It's like, so we've been live with this product that we launched. We've been live for 3 years, but we haven't been able to find traction with our customers. And what do we do? Like, how do we go and find this traction with our customers? Because whatever we're doing, it's just not working. We're not getting our traction yet. Bummer. But what do we do? And the challenge here is a couple of different things. And I've talked about very similar versions of this on the show before, because one of the things that crops up kind of all the time is this idea of, we launched, there's crickets. I want to hire a marketer or a salesperson. It's like, whoop, red flag, because you're not ready to hire a marketer yet. Marketers and salespeople work on predictability. Now, I've ranted about that plenty, so I'm not going to rant about that here. But the point is that you said you've been live for 3 years and you still haven't found traction for customers. And my question is why? Like, you can't. It's not a question of what should we try. You're saying like, oh, there's a strategy out here that I should be able to. No, we're not there yet. We need to go back and say, why is it that we are not getting customers? And there are a few reasons for this. Either you don't know where they are, so you're talking to no one, in which case we can work on that. If you are talking to customers, or you're putting a message out where customers are, Facebook, whatever, and they're not responding, it's like, okay, maybe we have a value problem here. Or if you are putting that out and they're like, oh, I have that problem, and they click and then they fall off. It's like, oh, okay, it's a value prop problem, but it's probably more on the solution side than the problem side. So at least we've got the customer right. And then it could be, okay, well, we got them in, and then, we kind of got them to resonate with that. Like, yes, this is me, but then we just can't close it in the sales cycle, whatever that looks like. So maybe you get them on the phone, but you can't close the deal, or maybe it's online, like they go to the pricing page, but they never click beyond that, or whatever. That's a spectrum. It's a funnel that you're putting customers through. And we call them at least the first half of pirate metrics, right? We have acquisition, we get them in, are they able to recognize the value, therefore activate? And then the third one is, can we get them to revenue, right? Can we actually get them to make that step? And so where are they falling off in that process? And the reason that this is so frustrating, for founders is because we've been spending years on this, we're not making any progress, but we know we have this brilliant product. And it's that last part where it really just falls apart, because until you have the customers, until you have the traction, you absolutely do not have a brilliant product. At the moment, your product is probably crap. And I don't mean that in a bad way, like you did bad work. I just mean that you skipped a step before figuring out where are the customers, what do they want, what are their wants, needs, and fears, and how can we solve those with benefits, with features, with an experience that we can deliver on, that we can design for, without getting into all of those processes. You just built something that was basically a guess. You just made this massive big bet on a guess, and that's like just unwise. Like, it's just freaking unwise. And so so we're kind of behind the curve now. And so now we got to figure out, okay, if we were to have gone back and gone through this process, what would we have done? First things first, do we know exactly who the customer is? If no, that's the first thing. Get out of the building, go talk to customers and figure out, oh, who are the people who have the problem that you think that they do? Where do they hang out? Right? How do they talk about the problem? Tell me about a time when, that sounds really, really painful. Tell me more about that. And, oh, what did you try? And why didn't that work? Right? And understand really their journey in that process and start to see what is the problem that they're experiencing. And then once you have that, you have a customer and a problem, now you can start validating, is there a solution out there? Now you can say, okay, they've given me the language of their frustration. And so I can go back and try to see if I can get them to resonate with that in a sort of asynchronous way, online, if you're a sales card, whatever. And then we start getting them in. Then you start getting them in, and you go each throughout the process to try to get them to go down the process. But the mistake is to say, we're not finding traction, therefore we're going to just keep hammering our head against the wall, to try to close on this deal, for a product. It hasn't been working for 3 years. Something is obviously a miss. Something is obviously missing. And so you have to go back to step one, talk to customers and figure out why that is, or figure out what that is. And that sounds like that's a kind of a downer. I'm not gonna lie, right? It's kind of a bummer, if I do say so. That's a bit unfortunate. But there is good news buried in here, and the good news is that you're still banging your head against the wall. And that means that there's still to work with, because what can happen as you're banging your head into the wall is that you can eventually just get tired of it, and you can eventually just quit. You can eventually just give up and be like, there's nothing here. And, you just sit down and stare at the wall. When you get to the point where you're sitting down and staring at the wall, you've already lost. And that's the point when it's like, okay, now it's time to pack up and move on. But you're still banging your head against the wall. There's still effort, there's still action there. There's still momentum there. All we got to do is say, the wall actually isn't real. Now it's time to take 3 steps to the right, because there's no wall 3 steps to the right. And how do you do that? In this case, it's about saying, let's ask the right question. The right question is, why aren't we getting traction? Why aren't customers saying yes? At what point in that linear process, in that funnel, acquisition, activation, and revenue, are they falling off? And then let's go look at that particular piece, come up with an experiment that we can use to figure out how we can tweak that thing to get back onto the right track, and then do it, because you have the momentum, you have the energy, you're still in the game. Just take 3 steps to the right. The wall ain't there anymore, So that's my thoughts on that. So yes, I just lectured for 10 minutes here, but that's okay. Welcome, June. Yes, I love you've been hitting me up on Twitter, talking about traction. I love it. You guys are making progress with Organic Nearby. I'm really loving hearing about the story. You're talking to customers and you're incorporating that, like it's changing your culture. That's just yay. You can't see me right now because of my technical issue, but I am applauding for you. You can hear it in the microphone. So very, very cool. Very good job. So as you guys know, I've been going through a process of going through my 7 principles of traction thinking. And, we've been making our way through. We are at principle number 6, which is proportion your effort to the evidence. So I'm just going to walk all the way up through step 6 and then talk about it. It's going to connect actually beautifully to the questions that we've actually talked about today, which is, I didn't plan for that, but it's a pretty nice little coincidence here. So we're going to roll with it. I'm going to get rid of that so we can see it. All right. So first principle is you have to maintain a model. And the reason is like, if you want to find traction, you have to know where you're going. And you can't know where you're going until you literally write it down. So first thing is write it down. Here's where we're going. If you're really early on, it's soft. Who do we think the customer is? What do we think their problem is? What do we think the solution is? How do we think we're going to make money, right? It's that high level stuff. But as you get further in, it's probably those little, the pirate metrics, that we were talking about a minute ago, right? Is you're going to have some type of system defined where you're looking, okay, here's how we think we're going to acquire customers, and here what those numbers look like. Here's how we're going to activate customers, and here's what those numbers look like, and revenue, retention, referral. You're going to kind of just get this whole system of numbers together. Then you have something more approaching what we might think about as a model. So you'd have that, right? So the first is maintain a model. You got to know where you're going, because you're not going to know if you're on the right track, and you're not going to know if you did better today than yesterday unless you have a model. So you got to maintain a model. So that's step 1. Step two is once you have this model down, you got to say, what do I know? What do I think I know? And what do I know that I don't know? Right? You have to separate fact from conjecture. You got to say, this is of that model. These are the pieces that I understand, these pieces that I don't, because that creates focus. Speaking of which, you want to focus immediately on the things that are going to have an impact right now. You don't want to focus on things that will only have an impact 2 years from now. You want to focus on the things that are going to impact you absolutely today and today only. So you want to focus on things that are going to have an impact right now. Hello to Headbanger John. John's got a cool startup in the area here called To Be Kind, as you can see from his little YouTube avatar there. Welcome, John. Glad to have you. So once you're focusing on immediate impact, how do you do that? You do that by testing. And the way that that works is you say, all right, I have an hypothesis that's precise, it's discrete, it's falsifiable. And you go and you put this hypothesis out into the market with an experiment. We believe that in order to, we're going to do this and we're going to measure this thing. And we know we're right if you put an experiment out there. A good founder is always, always, always testing something. And the biggest way, I think, to get value out of testing is through rapid prototyping. I talked all about rapid prototyping last week. I have an upcoming prototyping cohort coming up. So if you're interested in that, hit up this URL here, jdm.bio/prototypes, and put in your email address, and I will hit you up next week with more details on this upcoming prototype. It's going to be free. It's going to be virtual. It's going to be about a month long. It's going to be crazy fun, but you're going to learn all about how to really level up your startup by using prototypes. But enough shilling. I'm done shilling for right now. So you can check that out. Next, after prototyping, we get to today's principle number 6, which is when we're talking about these hypotheses, when we're talking about testing them, we're talking about running prototypes, we're talking about putting in some effort. And so a wise founder always proportions their effort to the evidence. And what that means is that there are lots of things that you don't know. And there are all kinds of degrees of knowing. You can be really certain of something because you have tons of data, all the way to this is a wild ass guess. And we're just making a guess right now. And that's okay, as long as you acknowledge that it's a guess. And then there's everything in between. There's like a guess, it's a reasonable inference. I have a little bit of data, I have some data, I have robust data, I have conclusive data. It's a whole spectrum. And you got to know where you are on that, because the further are along, the more you can make a big bet with confidence that you're not going to fall flat on your face. If you are really early on, and it's maybe even a reasonable inference, but you don't have data to back it up, and you go to make a really big bet, you're likely just going to fall flat on your face. You're going to have wasted your time on that process. And so what you want to do is, when you're making these bets, is say, how much do I know it? And then proportion your effort to that amount of evidence. And I cannot emphasize enough the value of doing that. And this ties back to our initial question, because the guide to business plan. So the point here is that you spent 9 months or 10 months or whatever it is to be almost a year. You spent all of this time working on this idea in your head without getting any validation of it. You just put a year bet on just what was in your head. And without all this data, without robust data, without knowing whether it's going to work, you just have this big thing in your head and you put that bet on it. A year, you bet a year of your life on it. You don't want to do that. You want to say, okay, what can I know today? What can I learn tomorrow, this week, to get data back in to find out if I'm on the right track? Because when you just have a cockamamie scheme, when you have a wild ass idea, and you have just something you're like, that's interesting, then all it's worth is that small amount of effort to say, am I on the right track? And as you acquire data, you get more certain and more certain, and you pivot, and then you can make bigger bets and bigger bets and bigger bets. But a year bet right off the gate, it just doesn't work. And it's the same thing with our friend trying to find traction, because you've been working, you built this big product, didn't have a way to get it out there, didn't have, you weren't sure it resonated with customers. And now you just got this thing sitting out there, and we're 4 years later. Sunk cost fallacy says you can't get that time back. And it's not about that anymore. And this is the problem. And this is why prototyping is so important, is because when you put in that much effort, it's so much harder to say no. It's so much harder to go, oh my goodness, we're on the wrong track. Because that means throwing away 4 years of effort, 4 years of work, just because we were wrong. And we could have found out we were wrong in a week, right? But we're past that now. And the point is now, what's the small bet that we can make to find out if we're on the right track? So you focus on the thing that is going to have an immediate impact. This is the thing I don't know right now. It's really impactful. It's really important in my business. I'm going to put an experiment out there, but you know what? I'm not super certain. So I'm going to put a small bet out there. I'm going to find out if it works. Or if you're further along, you can make a bigger bet. And that's basically how that works. So, yeah, my video's still wonky, so I don't know what's going on there. Camera appears to be working, but it's showing up black. My apologies. You don't get to see my face for the end of this, so maybe you're welcome. I don't know, but that's all I've got really for this week. I'll be back on September 29th, Thursday, 10 a.m. The way I always am to answer more of your questions. If you've got one, hit me up at the link in the description. Send me a question. Love answering your guys's questions. And make sure you give a like and subscribe, because it helps me out, helps me with my ego, and also helps other people discover and hopefully get some value out of this as well. So again, thank you so much for joining me. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I hope to see you at the Startup Challenge tomorrow. Peace out, guys.